This is Fearless Careerist with Dr. Catherine Robert. On this episode, Catherine speaks with the Director of Cloud Client Operations, Brian Kopf, about his passion for solving complex problems in his work and about leaving a company after 26 years.
I enjoyed it, and I was really good at diving into complex situations and complex challenges, bringing order to that complexity. That's one of the things that drew me to that, is because it was brand new. It was something that nobody really knew a lot about, and I wanted to take on that challenge.
Here's Catherine Robert.
When you don't have a career path after college, you end up taking the best job that you can find. Often, the entry-level jobs are in some sort of sales where there are high turnover and burnout rates. Brian Kopf had early sales experiences that taught him he didn't want a career in sales. He did discover, however, that he liked helping people solve complex problems. Fortunately, Brian was working for an information technology company at the start of the wireless era. Once he dug into the challenges of early network structure, security, and firewalls, he was hooked. Brian joins us here today to describe his path leading solutions for advanced technology over the last 25 plus years. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Catherine. Happy to be here.
What were your thoughts about possible careers when you were in college?
To be honest with you, there were no thoughts about possible careers as I was exiting college. I think that's probably common with a lot of young adults, because you enter college and you think it's going to be this fun experience. And for me, I went into it to go into college to play basketball. That was my focus. I came out of college without having that focus going in. I came out without a clear direction.
So you played basketball. Did you go pro after graduation?
Well, funny enough, because I didn't have a career direction or thoughts in my head about what I wanted to do after college, I did have a unique opportunity to continue to play at a lower level overseas, and I got to spend 2 great years out in Iceland.
Iceland, what
Playing
fun.
playing 2 seasons out there. Yes, it was definitely a change coming from being a city kid growing up in Chicago,
Uh-huh.
and having moving to a town that was 1,300 people, and
Wow, big
and
difference.
having everyone know what you're doing, all of the time. That was really really a great experience, and glad I did it.
Yeah. Did you have anyone at the time, either during college or after college, to kind of help guide you into your next step?
I wish I did. Part of that is on me, because, you know, when I growing up, it's growing up in a single parent household, and with
Mhm.
4 kids, third of fourth kids, you're kind of left off to your own a lot. So I didn't really learn how to seek a mentor or seek guidance
Yeah.
in terms of how to approach the next step, or how to think about my current step, helping my next step in life.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge for me. I really didn't have that, mainly because I didn't know how to do it. There were people there along the way that, looking back, would have been more than happy to help in any way they possibly could, had I
Yeah.
just reached out and asked for it. So, they don't know that you want the help until you actually ask for it.
Eventually, you had to thaw out and return back home. What did you do after basketball?
After basketball, really started to have to find a real job, a real life job. I obviously wasn't making a lot of money playing basketball. It was more of a fun experience and a life experience for me.
Mhm.
Coming back home, I just was looking for really anything I could get into that would be a full-time job, that would have the benefits, have the whole thing we have to do in life as adults and start to being an adult. My first job when I got home, it was more, actually, the first couple of jobs after I got home were really jobs out of convenience more than anything else. I had a friend whose cousin was a leader at a software company in the automobile insurance industry, and they were hiring, and I got a job there helping manage a territory,
Uh-huh.
that in the Carolinas, that eventually led me to move to the Carolinas for about a year.
Did that mean that you were going and selling stuff essentially door to door, or?
It was more of a support type role where you would come in and help train the insurance companies on how to use the software
Oh, okay.
or help guide them in terms of, their utilization of the software and how much
Mhm.
they're using it and how well they're using it. And then along the way, looking for those opportunities to increase what they're using. So it was more of a support first,
Mhm.
sales second. Those that were more successful approached it differently. They were more of a sales first, support second. To me, I got grounded in the support, first.
And did you like the job?
I mean, it was good, for the time being. It didn't pay a lot, but this was 1998,
Yeah.
so first jobs didn't really pay a lot back
Yeah, it
then.
was pretty bad. Yeah. 30, 40,000 if you're
Yeah,
lucky.
exactly. You hit it right on the mark.
Yeah.
But again, it was another good experience. I got to, move down. I lived in, Charlotte, North Carolina for about a year, which is another great experience for me. And I, experienced a different area of the country. Got to meet a lot of really cool people that, again, I still know and
Oh,
some of them
fun.
down there. And
Yeah.
you know, it all turned out well, although it was short lived.
What brought you back? Because then you came back to Chicago, right?
Yeah, I did. And the funny part about that first job was the about a month before I moved, relocated to Charlotte is when I met my wife. So
Aw.
we met and then a month later I moved. So that whole first year was long distance. So it was a life choice. We
Yeah.
had to decide what we were going to do and where we were going to live. One of us had to move. That turned out being me coming back home.
Yeah.
Then again, took another job to come home out of convenience. This was purely a pure sales job where it was one of my wife's family members
Mhm.
worked for another technology company. This was in the in the AutoCAD industry,
Mhm.
and helped me move back. Got set up in a job. I got back to Chicago, so that was the good part about it. The rest is questionable, but
Ah.
yeah, it was call it oil and water right from the beginning. It was one of those situations where you're given a desk, a computer, a phone book, and these are your products and figure out how to sell some stuff. That was not for me. Some people love that. I do not. And I
Right.
found that out right away.
Yeah. Okay. So that lasted about a little over a year. What led you to apply then to CDW?
As I was coming up on that year, one of the things with that job was that they did help me with relocation expenses. So we had a 12-month agreement to stay with the company. So as it was coming up on that 12 months, it was very, very mutual between both
Yeah.
myself and the company that it was not working out and we are going to be parting ways. And that's
Yeah.
was understandable and acceptable. So I had to start finding a new job. So I started to look around, started interviewing. I was trying to get into my background, and my degree is in industrial engineering and operations. I was looking for roles that would get me into an operations environment. But I also came across this company I'd never heard of called CDW that was hiring. So I applied, just because again, trying to find a job where I could stick for more than a year. I was into the interview process with two different companies.
Mm.
One was in the operations world, and then one was a sales job at CDW. I knew the sales job. I was hesitant about it because it was sales,
Yeah.
but the very first day I walked into the doors, it was one of those things where you feel the culture the second you walk in.
Yeah.
And it struck me and it stuck with me. And I was like, this is a place I kind of have to be. Even if it was sales, I'll figure it out. It was a larger, fast growing company. Knew nothing about them at the time, knew nothing about the IT and general IT industry at the time. It was just one of those places where the people were great and you had to be there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You started in sales. How did you move from sales into network security?
My time at CDW was long, so 26 years there. I was blessed to be at a great place where it could be there that long. First moving into sales, it was breath of fresh air because
Mhm.
of the way that they had a structured environment to bring sellers in. That's the bread and butter of the entire company. So they really trained up their sellers really, really well within every aspect of the job. But you went through a long training program before you even got on the phones taking customer calls. You went through a lot of training. It was months. So
Wow.
before you even had customers you can call your own. That was great. There was a lot of help along the way there too with the leadership. But as as I jumped into the sales role and got on the phones and started selling different products, they also had policies in place that were, if you're selling something that was a little bit more complex or a little bit more advanced, there were internal training programs,
Right.
to learn about that. If you weren't certified on those different products and how to sell them and the different rules, you would have to split the sale with somebody that was. So
Oh,
so you're like, okay, a light bulb goes off. And if you're smart, you're like, okay, I don't want to give 50% of what I'm going to make on this to somebody else just for them to spend 5 minutes looking it over when I know it's right already. And
yeah.
so
Oh, it's a great
if
incentive.
yeah. So I was 3 months into the company, and probably as soon as I started selling, I realized that, and I told myself I'm going to take every certification that they have possible internally. I have an engineering degree. This is not going to be super difficult. It really wasn't, and for me, and
Yeah.
that's fine. So I got that. I got those done really fast and started to make 100% of what I sold. So
Smart. I
that's
mean, what a
yeah.
great structure, on CDW's part, right? To
Yes.
motivate you to get more training.
Right. And then what kind of led into the first of a series of steps there, where when I talk to others about my time at CDW, I joke sometimes is that the only job that at CDW that I actually interviewed for was my very first sales job. All those certifications led into the next phase, which the company was growing in as this advanced technology. Your
Yeah.
network infrastructure, your security infrastructure, it was an area of growth for CDW because the company started, way back when in the 80s with the founders buying a computer, rebuilding it, and selling it via a newspaper ad. So
Wow.
the company grew based off of client devices like PCs and
Yeah.
laptops and servers. As you start to grow, you get a little bit more advanced. You have to figure out how to do it well. The company was growing in these areas of advanced technology, and they're looking for ways to make it grow faster and to build the specializations that were needed and the technical capabilities. It was being discussed. I raised my hand and said, "Yes, I want to do this.
Yeah.
This sounds great," because I was also helping other sellers with their advanced technology things as I was learning about it,
Yeah.
just naturally. That put me on the path for that next step to become initially what was a sales engineer, and then a solution architect.
Okay. After 4 years at that level, you moved into a supervisor role. How were your early leadership experiences?
So yeah, I mean, and that's again for me one of the things that at the time I didn't even realize it, but there's a saying out there that even back in the late 90s that resonated with me is that you can get everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. I didn't
Oh,
really realize that, but it
yeah.
was always in the back of my mind, and I was always looking for those type of opportunities. So that's what kept me into that supervisory role was that I was already doing that type of job already. W- So I was ready for it.
Yeah. You felt prepared for
Yes.
being a leader. Yeah.
Yes. And that's, as you become a leader, they say one of the hardest things to do is to become a leader of your peers. It was a little challenging, but I was already being the first one there and being the one who was coaching them and kind of guiding them along the way. It was a little more natural because they already looked to me as a leader.
Yeah.
But when you have to start making career coaching or performance and evaluations, that's the area where it became a little challenging. And being a new leader, you have to learn how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little tricky, and it's hard when you've been their peer, and then did you have to all of a sudden be the heavy when they didn't expect you to be?
Thankfully, the heavy hand was not needed very often,
Yeah.
but there were those conversations of, well, you might want to think about doing something differently or
Yeah.
doing it this way instead of the way that you approached it, because we all sat in a very close environment. We were not in this virtual world that we are today where you have no idea what your coworkers doing. We were within feet of each other, so we heard every phone call, every conversation. It was a
Yeah.
little easier. Thankfully, when you work with good people, they understand. They know that you're trying to help them is
Yeah.
the key.
My first office job, I was a teenager, and I was in the same office with my boss, and if I was mad at her,
You
I
have to go
would
take a walk.
well, I go silent. I just do silent treatment. She wasn't just a few years older than me, but she called me out on it pretty quick because, yeah, you can't work in the same room with somebody and not get along, so funny, experience to be right at somebody's elbow. You have to figure it out, right? It's pretty
For
funny.
sure.
In the last 25 years, the growth of advanced technology has been wild. Like, what did growth look like at CDW?
Boy, I'd say from that supervisor role, the next step I took at CDW was moving into an official manager capacity. The advanced technology was growing so fast. I mean, we were growing
Yeah,
30-40% every year. We couldn't add people fast enough to help support the business. And there was a decision along the way to carve out and build specific technology practices. So when I was a solution architect and then when I was a supervisor, we were handling multiple technologies. It was networking, it was security. There were some unified communications specialists along the way too. And the goal there is to get closer to the customer and to get more expertise and to have that knowledge to be able to help help customers with their specific needs and solutions they're looking to achieve.
yeah,
When the company decided to carve out and build these technology practices, we were given a choice of what's your top couple of ones that you want. There's going to be networking, there'll be security, there'll be, this small little group called telephony at the time.
uh,
There'll be data center, which is like your storage environments.
warehousing.
I had my number one choice was telephony. I got a lot of strange comments about it or strange looks about it, like, why do you want this? It's very small. It's not a big number. There's not a lot of attention on it.
Yeah,
To,
because video conferencing at the time was a novelty that was
right,
pretty rare, and it was
right.
very buggy, right?
Very, very. It was really at that point it wasn't really utilized very often at all,
Right.
if at all. Really just those phone systems that were out there and
Mhm.
helping, customers communicate that way. That's why it was called telephony. The reason I wanted it is because it was so small and because it was something brand new that the company really never put a focus on and built. That's one of the other things that when I look back is one of the things that I have really enjoyed over my career. And then I didn't know it at the time, but I enjoyed it and I was really good at diving into like complex situations and complex challenges, bringing order to that complexity. That's one of the things that drew me to that is because it was brand new. It was something that nobody really knew a lot about, and I wanted to take on that challenge. It might be the competitive nature in me from growing up and the whole athletics thing over the course of my life, but
Yeah.
to me it was a challenge. It was right at the time when that industry started to really take off. It started to move into what they call, turned into unified communications and then turned into
Mm.
collaboration as you started to build in the video conferencing and the conferencing and all the contact center technologies that came together. It was fun. It was really hard because of how overwhelming it was at some points. Being at such a large company, our customers relied on us a lot, and the volume of that was coming in and things that we had to do it was growing and growing and growing.
How
You know,
many people started with you on the telephony team?
So on the telephony team, there were 12 coworkers that were on the team. DW actually acquired another company along the way so we were moving along, growing at a good pace, 20-30% every year.
Yeah,
And then with this acquisition that we made, it was 2006. And what this company brought over that CDW did not have was a hyper focus and a lot of specialization around Cisco unified communications. CDW didn't have that background, and we were trying to
right.
build it organically, but the company made the decision to build it through acquisition, which is great. It brought over a lot of expertise and a lot of capabilities. But what that did to our small little team of 12 people
Yeah.
was it added this entire new world that we had to learn really, really, really fast. That was a huge challenge for us. At that point, I know I mentioned we had 12 coworkers on the team, which then by that point we had 15. We had to go on a hyper growth mode of adding coworkers to the team. So I had to build a business plan for it and got approval, and I wound up going from 15 to 31 direct reports within a matter of, I think it was about 6 to 9 months of just constant hiring, which,
Wow.
which
That's
was,
hard. We always had checklists for when we brought in new people. Did you have a new hire checklist of things to make sure that that person learned, or did the company take care of that for you?
oh, it was, we did not, but we had to build one really fast.
Sure.
And it wasn't really a checklist per se, but it was one of those things like, okay, these are the things that you need to learn. Evolved into a bit of a checklist,
Yeah.
but yes, that was an interesting time
Yeah.
trying to add that many people that fast.
Yeah, that's a lot, and in the meantime, it's the explosive growth of customers banging down
Right.
the doors to get a system set up that would allow
Yes,
them to have video conferencing, right?
of course. And of course, then, we're still not responding fast enough, and we're still not doing things fast enough because it's all the demand is building up, building up, building up. So good problem to have, but
Sure, but, no end of work, right?
yeah, exactly.
Did the company structure remain the same after that merger?
For the most part, the merger was challenging because the company that we acquired brought a lot of much needed capability and expertise, but their go-to-market approach was a little bit different than CDW. So CDW grew up from the small business and mid-market, and
Yeah,
we're starting to evolve into more enterprise level technologies and more enterprise level customers. The company that was acquired was focused already on enterprise level technology and enterprise level customers. So we're trying to merge those two worlds together. The go to market approach is when trying to bring them together and get them to work cooperatively from a sales point of view was certainly a challenge. Then
yeah,
of course there's the different opinions of how customer interaction should work, how
yeah,
we should progress through the life cycle of opportunities. But it took a bit of time to get that acclimation between the two companies and the two approaches. It was really one of
yeah,
the first major acquisitions of that type that CDW made. But there's a lot of good learnings along the way, and
yeah.
while there are frustrations, I mean, many of the coworkers that came over from that acquisition are still there.
Yeah. It's interesting from a numbers perspective. How do you take a very strong culture and then you merge in the same number or more people, and how do you bring them into that strong positive culture? You know, it's two entirely
It's
different cultures. It's gonna just become something different, right? Ultimately.
yes, yes, and
Yeah.
and it did, and it did. There were growing pains. There were things that were tried that failed, but then you pivot and change and you learn from it and you make the additional necessary changes that kind of brings everyone along. So
Yeah.
it morphed into a workable solution over time. It took a couple years to get there, but
Yeah.
CDW was an inside sales focused company, and this company that was acquired was more of a field led
Yeah.
organization too. So that type of work style had to merge. It took a little time. After a couple years, everyone started to get the hang of working together and got the rhythm. And
Yeah. What happened next then once you filled in the gaps of working together?
yeah, yeah. So I was in that role of leading our what was telephony, unified communications, and collaboration team. Eventually, was in that role for 11 years. All the way through that time period was a lot of hyper growth. But one of the
Yeah.
things along the way in the last couple years that I was in that position that I started to get into, which helped me move into the next phase of CDW, was the growth of what we all are very familiar with now is cloud,
Yeah.
and the kind of a subscription economy type world. This evolved out of the video conferencing space. Cisco at the time made an acquisition of a company called WebEx, and
Uh-huh.
we're all still familiar with that term.
Yeah.
It's a very much a brand name today. When that acquisition came about, Cisco had to take that to market through their channel, right? And CDW being one of their largest channel partners, we were one of those key routes to market. Being the leader of this group, that's another one of those areas is like I had been in this role for a long time. I was ready for the next challenge, more
Yeah.
than ready for the next challenge, because I'm one of those people that if I start to get into like more managing day to day, I get stagnant and
Right.
I'm not happy. So I had to find the next huge challenge, and this
Yeah.
came up. So market timing was great. I jumped into it, started to learn all about it, working directly with Cisco, was on their partner advisory group for WebEx. And what I really started to dive into were all the operational aspects of how it works,
Right.
how you invoice customers, because it's a different world when you have to invoice customers on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
Starting to get into that type of operation.
Yeah, and for listeners, who don't know much about that world, we'll give them a quick you can invoice based on amount of data they're using, right? Number of people. There's a lot of choices that you can make
Yes.
in that. So this is where it's so exciting that you were able to participate in the structure of what that looks like, right?
Yes, yeah. And if you think about your traditional product, transaction world that in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you get a quote for a product, you place an order for a product, you get an invoice for a product after
Right.
you receive it, and that transaction is done. When
Right.
you move into a subscription-based world, the short version of it is there are infinite number of choices in terms of how you can structure these contracts and agreements
Yeah.
by the number of licenses, by amount of usage, by in a lot of different ways. And you can also be invoiced for those on a monthly basis. So the transaction or the subscription itself is never closed. It's
Yeah.
always open because it can continue on for until you actually just cancel it. As I mentioned earlier, I like to dive into the complexity and bring order to it. That
Yeah.
opens up a lot of complexity. And that's really where, when I was able to dive into that and help bring that to market within CDW in my collaboration capacity, that led to my next role, because moving into a formalized cloud operations environment.
Yeah. That's really interesting. It's endlessly fascinating in a way that you may not realize, right?
Right, right, very much so.
Where does COVID fit into all of this?
So so after my time in that collaboration role, that and bringing that WebEx to the market, I was actually another role came up within CDW that they were formulating, and this one I was asked to move into the role to take on and build and lead what was formalized as cloud operations, because not only this WebEx area that I helped bring to market, there were also other areas of within the company that were trying to do the same thing. If you think about, everyone's familiar with, Microsoft Office 365, everyone's heard of that
Yeah.
these days by now.
Yeah.
But the company was also trying to figure out how to monetize and build operations around that as well. So with the advent of cloud and having to build structure around that, I actually moved into that role, which was another great move, which leads me, I'm still in that today. But that was in 2017. So the good part of it was I got a couple years to build the team and the relationship with the team and
And the
get to
structure,
understand and the
right?
structure
Yeah.
exactly. And then of course 2020 hits and everyone moves to a distributed work environment where we're all virtual, we're all on camera now, and what really hit during that time, and in the industry, what everyone heard about it too, was the Zoom boom, right? Everyone
Yeah.
everyone started utilizing Zoom and other video conferencing technologies
Yeah.
such as WebEx, such as Microsoft Teams, all of the above. They were all cloud based and they're all subscription based. So
Yeah.
that added a tremendous amount of workload to the team.
Oh, yeah. Everybody needed more cloud space.
Yeah, everyone needed the technology because their entire workforces were going distributed and virtual
Sure.
too, just like we were. At the time, a lot of these, OEMs like the Ciscos, the Zooms, the Microsofts, they were not all technologically ready for that change. So a
Yeah.
lot of the operations were manual and doing things through spreadsheets and doing things through emails and those type of things, working directly with them. So that was the challenge that came about from that operationally and workload wise was incredible. The amount of volume and traffic that we saw as an operations team, that was one of the hardest years, for
Yeah.
sure.
I can imagine. And in case people have forgotten, not every platform worked as well as the others, which I'm sure you were bombarded.
Correct.
No one had enough space originally, so everybody needed an upgrade to the amount of cloud space they were using, right?
Yes.
And things like screen share didn't work well. Big meetings were difficult, right? Like,
And the orders needed to be placed and fulfilled and set up within days, and the turnaround times were weeks, and nothing was happening fast enough, and
right.
there was too much coming in to even keep track of. So you're
Yeah.
just doing your best to claw and scratch to get as much done you could in a day before you
Yeah.
had to come back tomorrow and do it again.
I can only imagine what calls you were getting and the pressure from customers for that time.
Yes, it was interesting. And, thankfully, it only lasted for about less than a year, actually. We eventually got caught up. Yeah.
Yeah. Then CDW, of course, with this continued growth, kept reorganizing,
hmm
and you left this spring. How did it feel to be back on the job market after 26 years in the same company?
That is, yes, a very, very long time. And I couldn't say enough good things about those 26 years. The biggest part of it is always, you'll hear from anybody, is the people. The hardest part about it, honestly, Catherine, coming to terms with it emotionally.
Yeah.
Think from a logic part of my brain. The company had grown so much, and I think at that point I felt like I exhausted all the value I could bring to the organization, because again, my value and the passion, what I like the most, is jumping into these new challenges and helping incubate and grow and create the sense of normalcy out of complexity. I
Yeah.
got to the point where it was probably CW had grown to the point where, like I said, I think I'd probably extended the life of my value. So logically, I knew it was kind of time, but the emotional part of it was the hardest thing, I think.
Yeah.
Because you've spent a lot of time with all these people working together, doing things, and being a leader of a number of different groups. And at the time I left, I was a senior manager role. I had 3 managers that were reporting to me. All of them had teams that were
Yeah.
in place. And to me, it was more about the connection to the people that I felt like I was leaving. And I didn't
Yeah.
want to. The hardest part was getting over the fact that I was not leaving them in a bad place, and that I was not going to make their
Yeah.
lives harder by me moving on.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be selfish that way. Once I kind of came to terms with that, it became easier. It took a while to get there, but it
Yeah.
did become to easier to say, okay, I'm going to hit apply on this first opportunity that I'm looking for. Or I'm going to make this first phone call to
Oh.
a somebody in my network that I've known for
Mhm.
years to say, "Hey, I'm on the market."
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You hired a lot of the people on your team, right?
hmm
They had kids, they got married, like, they lived entire lives under your supervision.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a
That's a
hard
lot.
that's the hard part. The good thing is, and you compartmentalize that in your own brain of, like, this is the emotional aspect of what I'm thinking about, but it's not necessarily what other people are thinking. When I did wind up actually leaving and taking a new role that I have now, everyone was super happy about it. Everyone was like, they didn't feel about it the way that I thought they were going to feel about it, which made it all that more positive of a change.
And your skills are in pretty high demand, so it didn't take long for you to find a new role.
It didn't. It didn't. Thankfully, because as we're talking about this complexity of the world of cloud transactions and the cloud economy and how
Yeah.
subscriptions work, it is very unique. It is very different. What makes it complex and challenging is that there's no one way to do things. One of the things I talked about at CDW, I talk about at Ahead now where I'm at, is that in a complex world, if you're trying to scale in a complex world, variability is the enemy of scalability. When there's so many ways of doing things, that makes that challenge that much harder. And so the goal here is you have to try and make things consistent, make things standardized, make things the same. That's why it's unique and challenging, because
Right.
if we look at that product-based world, everything operated the same way. You can
Yeah.
make it was almost like an assembly line. You can make it all happen the same way and scale it very easily. That's so different in this world. And
Yeah.
so thankfully, the skill set was unique. And really, again, timing it out, opportunity and preparedness meeting, right?
Yeah.
They talk about success happens when those meet. This job was posted. I happened to see it. It was almost a carbon copy of the exact role I was doing at CD. It felt like a great thing to apply for.
Right. And you're now director of cloud computing at Ahead, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's called, the title is Director of Cloud Client Operations. Yeah.
And you've been there about a month. So how's it going so far?
Yeah, I actually, about a week ago, I hit my 30-day mark, which is, I think I can continue to play with the new person card, but their head is hiring a lot of people, so I'm starting to lose that ability. But it's been great. Yeah, I talked about the early days when I first walked in the doors at CDW, and the culture and the feeling that you get. I got the same thing
Oh,
with
that's
the head.
great. Yeah.
And for me, I had a lot of different opportunities I was talking about to people about and in conversations with. And for me, the biggest thing was the culture and the people I'd be working with and the environment. Being the age I am in my 50s now, or we're at the tail end of the career, right? And starting to look for what it is we want to really focus on. And we have a lot of a whole career built of understanding and starting to realize what it is you truly want. And it is
Yeah.
really just to work with good people and do
Yeah.
fun things and challenging things and grow. So yeah, moving into a head, that was the first thing, was the people and the culture that really stuck out.
Right. Have you had the opportunity to mentor people in your profession?
Yes, yes. And that's been over 20 years of being in leadership. A couple of the things I really enjoy about it. First, I talked about taking my first supervisor job was helping to clear obstacles and make their jobs easier, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing that I always enjoyed is helping, guiding others or mentoring others, even in their current job or as they take the next steps in their career. That can be as a supervisor or a manager or a manager of a manager, saying, okay, to be better in your job and manage performance and improve in your spot that you are now. There's that part of it, but then there's also the career guidance and things along the way that every leader in every industry finds rewarding. I mean,
Yeah.
in my opinion, you can't be a leader without finding that rewarding. But yes, I've had a lot of opportunities, both formally through in role performance management, and also informal. You don't report to me, but I'm going to help mentor you and guide you through like the next phases of your journey. Yeah.
Your skills and career within advanced tech grew right alongside the burgeoning industry. What do you see coming in the future of technology?
Man, the future of technology, the one constant is change. The biggest thing I think that's still to come, of course, cloud, it's been around for a little while, but it's not mature. So that's going to continue to grow and evolve. The big area that's driving a lot of things, and the buzzword these days is AI. That is driving so much change and so much hyper growth in a lot of different areas of the industry. But it also comes like cloud did. Cloud, when it first came about, nobody really truly understood what it meant.
Right.
Like what does cloud actually mean?
Yeah.
And I still think there's still some ambiguity to it, and people are still figuring it out.
Yeah.
We're at that part with AI. There's a lot of people out there. They're like, I don't even know what this means. A lot of organizations are still trying to figure this out for themselves. Is how can you use it as a tool to make yourself, your department, your company, your university, your organization more efficient, and use not to replace things, because AI cannot run without people, but you still need it. But how can you make it more effective? But that's driving so much growth, because you drive down any highway in the country these days, and what do you see popping up? You see data centers. You
Yeah.
see like these big, huge warehouse looking buildings that are getting
Yeah.
built. But that's driving a lot of that growth. It's driving a lot of the cloud growth, because it's all cloud based, and driving a lot of that infrastructure. So, and a lot of great conversations. That's one of the things that, being at a place like Ahead, is we're hyper focused on that as a
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
and on the leading edge of those innovations and conversations with the clients that we work with, so that we can be the trusted advisors and the experts to them.
Yeah. All right. My last question. What advice do you have for young professionals who are just getting started in their careers?
So yes, I actually am starting to give that advice to others right now, because I have kids who are, at that point in their lives, who have friends who are starting to navigate out of college into their careers. So it's timely. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give them is don't have a narrow focus on say I have to do this certain thing. Be open to explore opportunities. Be open to different types of experiences, because it can help shape and lead you down a path you never expected. You could wind up somewhere 25 years from now, in a completely different area that you didn't expect. So it's the experiences and the opportunities that you should be open for. But I still think you need to, graduating is have some sort of a plan, to have an idea of what you like to do. Hopefully within college, you've had enough experience and enough, trial and error to figure out what it is you like and what it is you're good at. So just help start to move yourself down into a path of a career. But the other part is don't be afraid to ask for help. For me, like I mentioned earlier, growing up, I was in a situation where I had to figure most things out myself, and I never really learned how to ask for help. And still to this day, it's really a challenge for me to ask somebody for help because I want to do it all myself. So the key thing is ask for help, look for those people who can help mentor you and guide you, and don't be afraid to continue to put your name out there, because it's, there's one person in particular that I've been guiding through and helping to get conversations rolling with certain companies and job opportunities. And the recruiters will say, okay, we might not be hiring now, but stay in touch with me as over the next few months, because there'll be something coming in 6 months. You have to continue to reach out and just keep your name out there, because the job market is competitive. And if you're not keeping your name out there and staying in touch, especially when somebody gives you the green light to do that, others will. And guess what? Their names are going to be recognized more than yours. So you have to not be shy about doing that.
That's great advice. Well, Brian Kopf, it's been a true pleasure having you as my guest. Thank you for sharing today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Catherine. It's been great, and look forward to the final podcast.
Thank you. To learn more about Brian Kopf and his work in cloud client operations, see the link in our show notes. I'm so excited you're here, and remember, you're not alone on your career journey. Together, we can share our stories, move boldly into that perfect job, and we can light the path for our future fearless careerists. I'm Catherine Robert, and I can't wait to hear your story.
Fearless Careerist is available on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Subscribe there or visit us at CatherineRobertEDD.com.